Hey everyone, Xeon over here from Nintendo Life, and finally, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is available to play. Anyone can pick it up off the store shelf and play it themselves if they want. There's a kind of a big question out there that a lot of people have that maybe have never played a Xenoblade Chronicles game before, and that is, can I play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 if I've never played a Xenoblade Chronicles game before? And to talk about that, to kind of find some answers, I'm joined by the consistently creative Kate Gray.
Hello, that's me.
It's you. You could put that on a business card because I think that's very accurate.
I don't have business cards right now, so
you don't?
maybe I should do that.
I think I'm fresh out because I gave a bunch of them away at GDC, but that's a good problem to have. It's fun to order new business cards.
Yeah, but you have to order them in like 1,000. I've never met 1,000 people.
Do you?
But
maybe
you don't, not.
But you don't have any now, so you must have met 1,000 people at some point in your life, I guess.
No, I just kept changing jobs before I ran out.
That's great. That's great. Well, you know what's also a fun thing is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I've put in a tiny sliver of hours in comparison to how many our reviewer PJ has, but I've really been enjoying it, and it's not that I didn't think I would, but I've never played a Xenoblade Chronicles game before. And Kate, have you not played any either?
No, I haven't. It's one of those games that's always sort of passed me by, a bit like Final Fantasy. Sorry, I don't play a lot of JRPGs.
You can't play them all, and you've played Dragon's Dogma. It's not really a JRPG, but you play games. It's like,
yeah,
it's
I've
all right.
played plenty of like more Western RPGs. You know, I've done Witcher and Dragon Age and all of that. It's just not so many JRPGs, I guess. No real reason.
That's all right. I'm glad you kind of brought that up. This has nothing to do with the conversation, but you know how like, depending on who you talk to, like the answer of like what games you've played can like drastically, I guess, for example, like you might run into someone on the street that like loves video games, but they only play Madden, and then you tell them you've never played Madden, and they're like, hold on a second, wait, you write for a games website and you've never played Madden before?
Oh, I get that all the time. Yeah. I haven't played a Metroid game, and everyone's like, how? And I'm like, because I probably wouldn't enjoy it. Don't really like platformers. And then they're like, you don't like platformers. No.
But that's video games. No,
I
that's
promise
okay.
I've played lots of games. I think people assume that I haven't, and it's like, no, I've played lots.
Well, you
just
know
not
what?
Some.
I've properly never played Metroid Prime 1, 2, or 3, so it's okay. We're on.
It's okay.
Everyone has their problems. But the cool thing is that with Xenoblade, we're trying to change that. Because Kate, you said are you kind of interested in playing 3? Is that what I was hearing, or am I off base with that?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was really into Harvest Moon games before the big schism.
I've never heard of it described that way. Oh. I was like, what, since like Another or like A Wonderful Life came out? Where are you going with this? But no, I see. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah,
Thank you.
since it became like Story of Seasons and everyone got really confused and the series went kind of downhill. And then Rune Factory 5 came out. And I was like, maybe I should play it. But then everyone said I should play Rune Factory 4. So I was like, oh, okay. So I've been playing that for the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is just Harvest Moon, except with a bit more fantasy life. And I like both of those games. So, you know, there are some games that I feel like I will probably love, but I don't actually know. And I don't want to drop like $80 on a game that's 150 hours long and then realize I don't like it, because I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that. I did that with Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, and that wasn't your...
I should give it a chance. I haven't got past like the snow bit, which is like the first couple of hours of the game, but oh boy, it's a slog. Sorry.
No, some people, like my partner and one of my best friends, like absolutely love Red Dead, but kind of like the whole Madden thing, you know, even Final Fantasy, you know, it's not every game is going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Exactly.
I also want to point out too that you do live in an alternate universe where Nintendo Switch games MSRP for $80.
Oh God, I know. Canadian dollars, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Not US ones, but they're like almost 1-to-1 at the moment.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Ugh. Something like that, yeah.
Well, so, you know, like I said, I've never played a Xenoblade Chronicles game before, and I've started with 3, and that's not really how I wanted to do it. you know? But when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 gets dropped in your lap, do you say no? So in regards to you, though, where do you kind of sit with the series right now? Like, do you want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 first? Because they're more readily available. Well, actually, I guess they're all pretty expensive still regardless, even though they've been out for a while. Or do you just want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because, you know, everybody's excited about it at the moment? Or is there something there that has really, like, interested you?
I honestly, if you showed me pictures of all the Xenoblade Chronicles games, I don't know that I would know which one was which anyway.
I understand.
So I don't even mind which one I play first. I'll play whichever one is the best one first. I mean, this one's got a bunch of 10 out of 10, so it seems pretty good. But, like, it's one of those things where, like, I have never even looked into what it is. What I know about Xenoblade Chronicles is there's a sword. Sometimes the sword is a person, and there's, like, just a massive world, and, like, maybe dinosaurs? I might be mixing it up with something else.
Oh,
maybe not
so
dinosaurs,
great.
but, like, big guys that you can, like, climb, kill? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. See, honestly, I think... I'm not entirely sure on some of this stuff either, but I totally understand your confusion and lack of understanding of the series, because it all, like, for the longest time for me, I think, or it's even just fair to say that, like, it looks like you're running around in a big world, kind of like Breath of the Wild maybe, and there's some RPG combat, and there's massive things that you maybe climb on and talk to that are alive, So I feel you. I feel you there.
Yeah.
Well, so as somebody who has never played any of these games, I guess, do you have questions or, like, concerns about diving into certain ones? Oh, okay.
I have so many concerns. Mostly, I kind of want to know, like, what is the closest point of comparison? Because in my head, it's Monster Hunter, and I had another really good one, Final Fantasy 15. Like, okay. I haven't even played that much of Monster Hunter or Final Fantasy 15, but I can, like, extrapolate that Xenoblade kind of looks like a combination of those two, like, sort of open world, like, real-time battling, maybe?
So the thing, I think, for me, so everybody, like, fully understands, I've only played Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I did start Xenoblade Chronicles X on Wii U, but I think I made it a bit past, like, the character creator at the beginning of the game, and that was it. Okay. And for the record, too, Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 all have their own pre-made, like, very structured character system. Like, X, I think, is the only one that has, like, a custom character. But the combat really kind of surprised me here. It reminds me a lot of an MMO. So more, I guess, Final Fantasy 14 in that sense, or Final Fantasy 11, or World of Warcraft. Like, anything, like, it reminds me a lot of that. Like, I haven't played a ton of MMOs, but I played a bit of World of Warcraft back in the day. And Kate, have you ever played Flyff on PC?
Flyff?
Yeah. It stood for, like, fly for fun, I think is what it was. It was just this really cute, free-to-play MMO. Shout out in the chat to anybody who remembers that. Please let us know.
All
if
of
you
my
remember
Fly
Flyff.
fans.
My Fly friends, actually.
Yeah.
But so it plays a lot like an MMO, but it's completely single player. There's no online components at all. So you basically, like, when you're standing in place, you're auto attacking. When you move around, your character stops attacking. So you kind of have to, like, strategically decide, like, if you want to walk around to, like, not, like, move out of the way of attacks, but you can also attack enemies from different sides. So, like, if you attack an enemy from the back, depending on what attack you use, you might do more damage to it, or if you attack from the side.
Okay, I like that.
And so you have your main attack that your characters are, like, always doing, but then you have, like, on the D-pad, and then on, like you can use the face buttons of the Switch, so, like, B, A, X, and Y will all also do, like, different special attacks almost that, like, have a recharge, or, like, there's a correct term for that, like, they have a cooldown, I think. But so it feels very, like, massive. What does MMO stand for again? Massively multiplayer online.
Multiplayer online.
Yeah. It feels like that. But the cool thing is, like, all of your characters kind of chat amongst themselves while you're fighting, and you have your party in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 consists of at the start it's 6, or well, I think it's 4 or something like that. It's anywhere between like 4 and 7 people can be on your team at once.
Wow,
and
that's so many people.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty wild in that regard. But so that's kind of how like the gameplay plays out. But then you can also switch between those characters kind of whenever you want as well, which I think is a first for the series. I don't know if you could do that in combat in 2, but now you can like you can traverse around the world as whichever character in your party you want, except for like the 7th party member that you add, which like you can kind of rotate them in and out. You can't ever play as them. They just kind of like hang out and fight. But the rest of the characters you can kind of choose who you want to be. But so yeah, long story long, it feels like an MMO, but just by yourself. But it does it well.
You've mentioned that you can have like a billion characters. I believe you said 7. I'm rounding up.
Yeah, you were correct. Yeah,
something like a billion. I've been realizing lately that what I'm really into in games and books and TV and film is really good characters. Like, I like a character-driven plot. I like interesting characters that aren't just like boring archetypes. Does it have that? Like, am I gonna care about these characters, or are they all sort of like, I'm the perky one, I'm the grumpy one?
I think they do have kind of like to make sure that all the characters aren't the same, you know. Mm-hmm. I think they definitely have tried their best to make each character different, but I think in the past for me, certain Xenoblade characters have come off a little to me. Mm-hmm. I think in like gameplay trailers and footage that I've seen, and even I don't know, maybe it's just a me problem. But for some reason in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I haven't really felt that way about any of the characters. Like I'm really starting to care about them, and I think that is the part that is pulling me in the most, is the characters. So if you are the kind of person that wants to really kind of invest yourself in the character's story and you know, and their journey and kind of get to know them more, I think throughout like even the short amount of time that I've spent with the game already, like most of the time I don't do a very good job of like memorizing characters' names, but this time I can tell you there's Noah, Uni, Lance, Mio, Tyon, and Senna, I think, are the 6
Does everyone
like,
have
main characters.
4-letter names? Is that like a Xenoblade thing?
So actually, so believe it or not, Mio's name is spelled M-I-O, and I it was just a missed opportunity to make it M-I-I-O. I don't know why Nintendo didn't let
like
that happen.
Like M-I-Y-O, you can make it 4 letters.
Oh, you're right.
It's not hard.
You're right. That's true. There are other ways, yeah. But I think the characters are my favorite part of the game so far.
Really?
Yeah, and like even me, like I think like the reason I love the Earthbound series so much is because of the characters and just how silly they are and how much weird conversation you can kind of fall into. This game, there are some moments like whenever you finish a battle, 2 of your party members usually always have something to say, and Uni, for some reason, like Lands will always complain about like a battle being too, when it's done too quick, or if the enemy was too easy, he'll complain about like, that was too easy. And Lance is like this big bulky like guy who has this massive sword that he defends your party with. And Uni always says like, turns out it looks like Lands wants something a bit meatier. And it's just like, I've heard it so many times, and you'd think it would get annoying, but now it's like it's like a meme in my head. I just like every time I hear it, I love it.
It kind of sounds like maybe it's Dragon Quest that does that, maybe, or Final Fantasy. Like it's like a trope, isn't it, in like JRPGs to have a character be like, haha, that was easy, and you're like, we just spent 15 minutes fighting this boss. That was not easy.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I think Final Fantasy 15 for sure had the, what was it? And we can talk about this game because there's the mobile version on Nintendo Switch. What was the guy that has the gun? He's got a yellow hair, spiky, but he always
Cloud
like
Strife.
no, goodness gracious! Look at Final Fantasy. Look at you. But he would always, whenever he would shoot his gun, he would say something about, oh, hi there, opening, I think is what he would say.
Oh, that's
It was
bad.
like right before a special or something like that. And I think this game does have that too. But it's kind of, I don't know, there's something kind of charming about it this time around. I haven't been annoyed by it. And I think the last thing about characters that I want to say is there's one particular character that's just kind of a jerk. Kind of, I don't know. I just didn't like him at all. And I've been starting to see more and more. I've been starting to learn more and more about that character and kind of understand the reasons that they are the way they are. And it feels, I appreciate them, and I'm respecting them a bit more. And the game is, there's some really cool cutscenes where the game kind of delves into the characters, and I mean, I'm appreciating that aspect. Some of the cutscenes are very long, so grab some snacks, I will say.
I'm looking at some screenshots now because I haven't really looked at it properly. It's kind of like if somebody's talking about Game of Thrones and you're not into Game of Thrones, your eyes just sort of glaze over. Whenever you see like screenshots of like the newest episode, you're like, yeah, dragons, yeah, whatever.
It looks like Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. And so it's not out of disinterest. It's more out of like, it's just a lot to take in. There's so much UI on the screen.
Yeah.
So much. I don't know what half these things mean. There's an interlink. There's chain attack. There's a launch combo. It's very overwhelming.
So I will say in that regard, when I first like looked at the UI as well, I saw, I think Alex and Felix might have done a video about the UI and how there was just a lot on screen, and I too was like, this is disgusting. But then when you finally play it, I think a lot of what you're looking at is kind of centralized in the screen, and the rest of the borders are completely taken up by your character's health, the different attacks you can do, if they're recharged, there's like an enemy health bar. There's tons of stuff to look at. But since your main character is always going to be in the middle of the screen, and it's not that the enemies are always going to be there too, but you're usually probably going to try to put yourself near them. Yeah. There's not really like a huge need to look outside of that. But when you're not in battle, the screen is completely, other than like a little tiny thing on the bottom right corner, the screen is empty.
Yeah, because it's a gorgeous game. Like, they just want you to see everything. That makes sense.
Yeah, and all that info is kind of necessary too, like to play the game. Like you want, like there might be features to turn off some of that stuff if you want, but I think it's not like Breath of the Wild where pro mode, I don't remember what they called it, hero mode, I don't know, but there was that element where you could turn off a bunch of the HUD elements in Breath of the Wild, and you could just kind of memorize things over time. I think you can do that in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as well, but it would be at your detriment. You probably wouldn't want to do that. But I've grown to not really care about the HUD anymore now.
It's kind of like just putting a big piece of paper over your car's dashboard and being like, I don't need to know all of that.
It's true. Yeah. Over time, the more you play, you'll just figure it out.
I know how fast I'm going.
Yeah. I don't even look down at the speed. Sorry, officer. I do think Xenoblade is one of the games that you don't want to do that. You do want to leave the stuff on, but I think you won't mind it as much. And then in regards to what you were saying about like, there just being a lot of stuff to learn. Like you said, there's like the interlink and there's chain attacks, and it's like people talk about rhythm, like you got to keep your rhythm in battle. Like even I still kind of don't entirely know what that means. And like chain attacks are a bit overwhelming, but they're really fun. And the game it introduces these things to you slowly as well, and doesn't ask you to figure it all out at once. And there's kind of like PJ mentions in his review as well, that there's just a boatload of tutorials that you can kind of check out whenever you want. And you can play them, and kind of like the game will walk you through how to figure some of this stuff out at any point. So if you ever feel lost, you kind of always have that to fall back on. But I think I'm about 10 hours in right now, and I've never felt the need to like go reference one yet. Like I'm still I'm figuring out chain attacks. I haven't really understood the rhythm perfectly. Maybe I have, and I just didn't know. I don't know. But I think the game does a good job of making sure you understand it as you play, So it may look overwhelming, but it hasn't been too bad, I'll say.
Okay. I have a question.
Oh, I love questions.
Good, because it is one. I'm having trouble conceptualizing what the game actually is. I get that there's this beautiful big open world, and I get that there's a lot of fights with a lot of different enemy types. Cool. But like, is that it? Are there cities? Are there people giving me quests? Is it just beat up monsters forever? Like, no one ever talks about the stuff outside of beating up monsters, which is fine. Sure. But I kind of want to know, like, does the game just start and it's like, here's your sword, go?
Yeah.
Or surely there's a story. What is it?
Well, there definitely is a story. I'm so glad to be able to let you know that. I think maybe one reason you and maybe other people haven't heard a whole lot about the story is because it seems like a lot of Xenoblade fans kind of hold this story very dear. And I think it's kind of like, I don't know, when you play, if you have a favorite RPG, I think usually, like I can say for me, I'll stand at the top of a mountain and I'll scream about Final Fantasy IV, and everybody will say, but what about Final Fantasy VII and VI? But and those games are great, but I think 4's story is fantastic. But for me, I don't really want to tell other people more about it than that, because I just kind of want them to believe me and try it and see for themselves. Because with any good story, I think, the surprise it can be really part of what makes a story so fun to experience. If it's why anybody takes forever to tell a joke, because they, the journey is part of what makes a good joke so good, or even just a good story. So yeah, there is a really cool story in Xenoblade. I can't speak for the whole thing since I've only put basically a sprinkle of hours into the game, but I will say that there's already been a few moments where I've like yelled out loud like what is going on, but in excitement. It wasn't like that I was confused or anything like that. And the other cool thing with that too is that you don't really, like, from what I've played so far, since I haven't played any of the other games, I don't feel like I'm missing anything either. It seems like PJ's kind of told me that this game, it's not really like Final Fantasy, where every single Final Fantasy besides like 10 and 10-2 and Crisis Core and Final Fantasy 7 are like those ones are connected, but all the other Final Fantasies are disconnected. This game seems like there are some things that people that have played the other ones will like look at and be like, oh, I remember that. Or maybe they'll be able to piece things together about the story sooner than other people. Maybe they'll recognize a character. I'm not certain on that, but I think there will be little things that if you play the other games, you'll get it. But what I'll say right now is that I still, like, if I had the day free, I would go and play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 right now. I'm not at a point where I'm like, man, I wish I was playing 2 or 1. I do want to go back and play those eventually, but from what it seems like so far, like, I think you're safe to to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and understand the story. And PJ even mentioned to me too that there are times in the game where the game will like discuss like certain topics that maybe the player would never have any understanding about because if they haven't played the other games, but the characters in the game might discuss events that happened prior. So kind of might get like filled in on those things as you go anyways, and maybe won't feel the need, and it won't feel like you're missing out. If you've never played the other ones, it doesn't seem like you're getting a lesser experience here, or you're going to be confused.
That sounds kind of like how Dragon Age Inquisition and The Witcher 3 handled it, where The Witcher 3 is just like, listen, you haven't played the last 2 games, so we're just gonna put Geralt in a bath and we're gonna ask him a bunch of questions, and don't worry about it. We're just trying to determine the game state. It won't affect you. And you're like, yeah, sounds great. In Dragon Age Inquisition, there was a website called Dragon Age Keep where you could input all the decisions that you'd made in the Dragon Age series and then import it into Inquisition. So whether you had played the previous games or not, you could like tinker with the world state in that as well. And both games have this kind of thing where they'll be like, oh no, the kingdom of Flibbidib has something, and you're like, I don't know who that is. And they're like, what it means is you need to go and hit someone with your sword, and you're like, yeah, I can do that. That's great. That sounds great.
I can understand that.
So it's like you don't always follow like the ins and outs of like the kingdom's politics or whatever, but you still get to have fun. You still get invited to the party, as it were. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to hear that like more games are kind of doing that, because I think it's a lot to expect people to have played like massive RPGs that take hundreds of hours to get all the content out of. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to play the other 2 Xenoblade games. Maybe 2. Probably not, but yeah.
Well, it's tough because they both look really cool in their own rights. And for somebody who like wants to kind of join in, and like, you know, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is getting like lots of attention, and I think rightly so, you know, and if somebody just wants to, you know, jump in because maybe they like the characters more, like that's one thing actually that I now that like that's been brought up, I think I find Rex in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is the main character, kind of annoying, and I think even Shulk from 1, and I'm sorry to anybody who gets mad at me about that. It's a really, like, my opinion only comes from the media I've consumed and from Smash Bros. You know, I haven't played the game, so don't listen to me. But
I like Shulk's hair and his sword, and that is all I know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty all right. Just don't. Rex is just a little. I don't know what I have to say about him. But the difference here is that the main character in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is such a like compassionate, caring, like good dude. Like you want to follow him, like the adventure that he's trying to take the rest of the party on. And I think, you know, I don't know enough about Shulk and Rex to really kind of know what their journey is like, since I haven't played those games. But what I will say is that like Noah's just, like I said, he's just a cool, like, he's not even cool. He's just kind of like, he puts himself in situations that like maybe aren't always the best decision, but he like is doing what he thinks is right. And I think that's very, like, I respect that a lot. Yeah. And I think for that reason, like, I'm enjoying the game a lot more too, because it's, I don't know, like people play games for different reasons. Sometimes people play a game where you get to destroy the world because they just want to live out a weird like fantasy of theirs. I don't know what's going on there.
I've been playing Power Wash Simulator. So.
Oh, cool.
Get a wash of van. It's great stuff.
Because you don't want to clean your own things, right? So you clean things digitally because it's quicker or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you've been playing that, by the way. I do want to pick your brain about that at some point because I'm genuinely curious. I was like, that game looks dumb. It sounds dumb. But then I watched a gameplay trailer and I was like, oh no. That looks satisfying.
I hope they bring it to Switch with like Joy-Con motion controls, because that would be so good.
Well, so if Power Wash Simulator ever comes to Switch, we will come back and we will get the full rundown from Kate on that game.
Yes, and absolutely.
So I want to know, and I bet the people also would love to know. There was something. Oh yeah, so Noah's cool. Noah's a really good dude, and I think a lot of the other characters are actually pretty swell as well. So that really helps kind of propel my want to play the game. And I think it'll propel anybody else to stick with it too. Yeah. But I kind of wanted to touch on the other things that you asked in that last question. You were kind of asking like, do you just attack things and like what's going on? I think the story is it's kind of one of those things that like I'm probably in this video, I'm not really going to feature many cutscenes because I want to keep a lot of that kind of pure for people, because I think it's fun. It's fun to kind of go in not knowing a whole lot, but the story is very emotional. Like PJ mentioned that a lot in his review, and it's very fair. It pulls at your heartstrings quite a bit.
Yeah.
And but the story kind of follows this party of like 6 characters that are basically trying to kind of change the world, just like any RPG, I suppose. But then it kind of, you follow this kind of, like, the game's not fully open world from what I've gathered, and kind of that's kind of what PJ said as well. You kind of follow these paths and go to different towns, and you pick up quests, and you're kind of you always have kind of like this big picture in mind, but you're trolling around, running through the world, finding new maybe not gear isn't like a huge thing in this game, which is kind of like bums me out a little bit, but you find other cool ways to kind of customize your characters, and I won't get into that too much, but it kind of replaces like the like, oh, look what I found in this treasure chest, whoa, kind of feeling that you get in a lot of other RPGs, you know.
Yeah.
But they do some cool things with that. So there's the game's pretty structured in that regard. It's not like you can go off and do side quests, but you can't like find yourself on like the completely wrong side of the map, from what I can tell either. But I don't know if that really fully answered your question, but there is structure to the game, and there is a point to it all.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Games with points are good.
I mean, not always. Sometimes if a game just throws you in, right?
True. Pointless games, also good.
Not to tell you you're wrong. That's not what I meant at all either. But
I'm still really struggling to like get a hook on it. You know, like my brain's going, okay, what similar games have I played? Like Nier Automata, maybe?
Okay.
I didn't play much of Final Fantasy 15, so that's not that helpful. I've played a lot of Final Fantasy 7, but it doesn't seem that similar. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't played a similar game.
Well, I think it is it's one of those games that, like, if you haven't played an MMO, I think there aren't really a whole lot of, and I'm not saying you, but just like the general audience.
Yeah.
If you haven't played an MMO, I think there aren't a lot of other like solid games to compare it to.
Okay.
And I think that is kind of what surprised me the most about the combat was like when I actually sat down to play it, or actually, I was watching gameplay first. Like I was watching some solid gameplay one of the past games, and I was like, how do you play this? Like, what is going on? And it really is kind of like it feels a lot like an MMO where you just kind of pick an attack, you wait for your character to do it, you watch your health bars, you make sure everybody's staying alive, and all of the different characters you have very specific classes. Like you'll have a healer, you'll have somebody that boosts the defense of the party, maybe the attack as well, and then those characters will kind of drop like circles on the map that if you stand in those areas, the characters that are in those areas will be healed, they'll do more damage, they'll have a defense buff as well.
Okay.
So it really feels a lot like an MMO. But the one game series that I kind of want to draw back to here, which a lot of like Nintendo fans maybe haven't played them, but did you ever play any of the Dot Hack games on the PS2 or the remakes, even like the remasters?
No, one just came out, didn't it?
Yeah. So they redid there was the Dot Hack Standard series, which is kind of tied in with the TV show, I think, that was like shown on Toonami back in the day. And then that had 4 games in it total, and all of them were a complete, like, you wanted to play them in order. And then they did Dot Hack GU, which was only a 3-game series, and that one they remastered within the past few years. And I think it's either on Switch or it's coming to Switch, but those games did a really good job of like replicating the MMO feel with also being a single player game. Like I remember playing the first one, and there was so much interaction with your party, and I think you can even like log out of the world, because that game is basically an offline MMO. But you could log out of the world, I think, and like chat with your friends, and it felt real. And I don't think I'm getting that exact same like connection with the characters in this game, but the gameplay itself and kind of I'm feeling similar feelings to this, and I can't really think of anything else on Switch or even like a past Nintendo platform that is really like that. So it is kind of a unique game in that sense, but it's you're not wrong for like struggling with finding comparisons.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we were talking before we started making this video, you mentioned Dragon's Dogma, which is one I have played all the way to the end, which I don't do a lot of, but I just really liked it.
It's hard with RPGs. I don't blame you at all.
Oh, absolutely. Who has the time? Literally us. It's our job. But surprisingly, I don't have much time to play games, despite that being my job. But Dragon's Dogma, you have a party. It's only a party of 4 with the main character included, but it does feel like you're playing with real people. Very repetitive real people, because they say the same things all the time. But it's still like I haven't really found that like in another RPG, that sort of feeling like these are people rather than just pre-written NPCs. It's weird that there's a difference there, but yeah. I want to play Dragon's Dogma again. Even
from that Dragon's Dogma chat that you and I did, which I'll put a link in the description down below. Basically, Kate and I just talked about Dragon's Dogma, and she kind of did what I'm. It was like flip-flop roles here, where I just kind of asked you a bunch of questions about it as well, and it was really fun. but it does kind of feel like if the combat was the same. I think these games would be kind of similar from what I saw of like the gameplay that you sent over, where you kind of like you go to a place, you do some stuff, you're with your party, it feels kind of like Final Fantasy 15 in that regard as well, which I'm actually like when I played Final Fantasy 15 beginning to end, and I loved and hated that game so much. It was a lot of passion for that game in very different regards, and I'm not feeling the same way here with Xenoblade. Like, I'm really enjoying it a lot more than hating it, which is good. It's if you played Final Fantasy 15 and you liked the characters, or if you played Dragon's Dogma and you enjoyed the kind of experience, maybe not the end story for Final Fantasy 15, if you forget that part, I think Xenoblade would be a good game for just people who want like something big to kind of like invest themselves in. And like for me, like Xenoblade is not going to be the game that I'm going to just like plow through in a month. I bet there are people out there that will do it, but I'm kind of... Absolutely.
There's people that have like already completed it. Is it out? Is it out?
It is at the time that we're releasing this video. It is out.
It's out
officially.
Yeah. People will have completed it already.
I hope not. But I'm excited for someone to prove me wrong.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like 150 hours, so maybe that's a bit unrealistic. But,
yeah, well, I mean...
If you've finished it, let us know in the comments, right? Sorry, that's your job.
No, please let us know. Kate, yeah, you jump in whenever you need.
Thank you.
So that's the thing, too, is PJ did say that it took him about 100 hours to finish Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Yeah.
And this does seem like the kind of game where there's secret bosses. There are, with the enemies as well that are on the map, you see a lot of the same type of enemies kind of like over and over again. Mm-hmm. There might be some color palette swaps, too. But one cool thing that it does is there are like different variations of those enemies. And they kind of incentivize you to go fight them by the fact that there are big ones that will, like, I don't remember what they're called. They have a special name, but they'll give you more XP and they'll be harder to fight. But you'll also find like shiny variations that aren't colored different, but they might have like a sparkle in their level that hovers above their name. And those ones will be like the same difficulty as like a standard enemy, but they'll just give you more experience for fighting them. So I could see there being a lot of different ways that the game kind of like gives you more reasons to keep playing even after the story's over. So this could be the kind of game that, like, if you really love it, you could spend 100 hours doing the story, but maybe you spend 200 hours like finding all of the secrets that the game has to offer. And if memory serves me correct, there's some like really cool stuff to unlock in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for like people that have been following the Xeno gears for years.
Wow, okay.
And I don't know if this one's going to have things like that too, but I think it's really good bang for your buck, if that makes sense, as well. Like, you're going to get a lot of time out of this game if you enjoy it.
Okay.
I don't know why I brought this up, but here we are.
I've been looking around at, like, PJ's got a bunch of guides prepped that will be up by the time this video comes out, so like lots of guides. And I've just found out about these guys called Nopons or Nopons or something, and I love them.
No, you're right, yeah.
And they may have single-handedly sold me on the game. They're so fluffy.
So one thing that I kind of felt before playing this game, like from, because I think all of those, the Nopons, I think is what they're called, they're in, and you were right, you said it right one of those ways.
One of the times, yeah.
Yeah, I put a lot of effort into like making sure I said them right in the review, and I hope I did. Please let us know. But I was I thought they looked kind of weird, and I just didn't really like dig them. But after playing 3, like the main, there's 2 that you meet in the game that kind of, from my time with it, they stick with you. And their dialogue is always really silly, and their voice actors are like, one of them like really matches the character, and the other one like really surprised me. And it's like, PJ was very surprised by the fact as well that he actually liked these characters, because on the like offset, he thought that they were going to be super annoying, and I felt the same way. But I've slowly started appreciating their existence as well. And throughout the journey, you'll meet more and more of them.
Yeah, I saw those like 20 of them or something, which is so many.
Oh, goodness.
But I think that the cute but annoying like sidekick / merchant animal, like a Moogle, right? They have the tendency in JRPGs to be just really irritating, but sometimes in a good way.
Yeah, and it might be this time that there's variety. In this JRPG series, at least, like there's enough of them floating around, and they don't all look the same, and they don't all say "Kupo" to you. Like they all have some kind of, like they're all their own unique characters, which is really neat, and it gives them. They don't like overstay their welcome in turn then, because they're all so different. And I think you'll really like, I know you already said that you're in love with them just based on like what you've seen of them, but I think you'll really like those characters.
I just like it when they're round.
One of them is like, I'll just spill it here, but one of them is kind of like a technician for your party and like will do repairs and stuff and is really like buff, or like has this very like tough attitude, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah, buff round.
And then the other one's a chef and just wants to make you food, but is also super sassy, and like when you disrespect them, they get very upset. And
how do you disrespect them? Is that like an option in the dialogue? Just like disrespect.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the game doesn't really have like dialogue choices. It kind of it makes the cutscenes are all very structured, so there's not really like choice in that regard. But you'll find out. I'll either tell you in private, or people who play the game will see how you disrespect them. But it happens, and just know you have no choice in the matter. It's not your fault.
Cool.
Just the way the game wanted you to play it. Okay,
well, this is a lot to think about.
This chat, I was expecting it to be like long and fun, but this is a very long discussion. Do you have any final questions, I suppose, that you want to throw out there? Like anything I didn't touch on, or?
I did have one. Is there a skill tree? I really like skill trees.
So there are. Let's see how. So there are a lot of different menus that a lot of different ways. So there's gear. There's like basically accessories you can add to your characters, but there aren't like new swords and things like that. So there's tiny little accessories. There's also you can change your classes, so you can pick and choose like what class you want to use, and then those classes have levels. But then there's also like, I haven't fully understood this element yet, because it only came up once, and I haven't there's a lot of things to dig into, so I haven't figured this out yet. But there's like a gem system where you can make gems and then you can give those to your characters. But I think you can only have so many gems given to a member at once, so I think you can kind of like choose a path for your character, but then I think you can remove all of them and kind of then add them again. So that's kind of, I think, the only skill tree type area that exists, but I could be off base with that. Maybe you can give one character as many gems as you want, and then they can be the best character in the universe. I'm not sure, but what it seemed like was that you could only kind of feed them so many, but then you can remove them and give them to another character if you want, kind of like, not really like materia in Final Fantasy VII, but the element where you can take them away and you can spread them out kind of wherever you want. That was the closest kind of skill tree thing that I think exists. So it's not really like I don't think it's what you want here, or what you were asking about.
Well, I do like menus and like inventory management, and I'm making myself sound like a very interesting person, but I like, in Final Fantasy VII, the remake at least, I like tweaking things to give myself like +1 attack, and it's like that does absolutely nothing, but I feel good about it. So that sounds like it's up my street. Apparently that's a British phrase. Up my street.
Up your street? I think I would say up my alley in that regards, which makes
that's creepy though.
Yeah, it does. It sounds sketchy, which I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I will say too that the equipment, like the accessories that you can add to your characters, I've been kind of like, every single one has a different type of buff. You know, it's not like this one gives you +2 attack. They're not that boring like most accessories in video games. The accessories kind of make up I guess a bit of that skill tree aspect, where some of them might give your characters like +20 health, or one of them might, like when you heal characters, when you're playing as a healer character, your character accrues aggro, and then that draws in more attention from enemies, but there's one accessory that I saw that reduces the aggro for healers. So there are the accessories also kind of play into that customization aspect pretty heavily as well. So if you like that, there's a lot of tweaking you can do. And at the beginning of the game, you can only add one accessory per character, but I think as your characters level up, they unlock the ability to add more accessories. So there's a lot of different kind of builds you can have for your character in that regard too. And like I said too, with the class system, like you can make your characters any class you want. So you can, like, if you wanted a full class of healers or a full party of healers, you could do that. The game at one point is even like, that's dumb, don't do that. But you can, and you can see what happens.
All right. I love customization. I love the little round guys.
And you're set. Just, I hope you don't want to change your character's face, because you can't do that, but you can change their clothing. So.
We didn't mention, but we've been talking about how they've got nice eyes. So
they do. They really
job,
do.
Monolith Soft, for making the nice eyes.
And honestly, like every time, like the game does a lot of close-ups where, like, they really let you soak in the effort that they put into characters' like hair and the eyes in general.
Yeah.
And they like Monolith really wants you to know that they probably had like one person developing eyeballs in this game, even though they're not 3D. They're just like cell shaded one layer, or not one layer, but they're flat, but they look sweet.
Congratulations to the eye artist.
Yeah, when the award ceremony, or when the award like season is in full effect, Kate, I am going to bring that back up again, that we implement a best eyeball award.
Best eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, what's it called? The AI, the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative.
You're right.
That's got good eyes too.
Yep. So now what you're saying is there's a competition underway here.
Best Eyes 2022.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3, watch out. It'd be so great if we could get put on the back of like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Deluxe Edition. Best eyeballs in gaming. Yeah. Please, Nintendo, do it. Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you for coming on and interrogating me about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I hope you do understand that, from what I've gathered and from what PJ believes, that you can dive into this game without any past experience, and the game will kind of it'll tell you the things you need to know. But if you've played the past ones, I think it sounds like you'll be rewarded with some little bits here and there. Maybe you'll have a leg up on the story at times. I can't contest to that for sure, but regardless, the series isn't gatekeeping you from this new entry. You can play it if you want. Don't worry about it. Don't care about what everyone else on the internet says. Just, if you want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3, just play it. It's fine.
All right. Maybe I will.
Maybe you won't.
Maybe I won't.
And that's fine. That's fine. Maybe I'll put it down too.
I don't have 150 hours to play a game.
Yeah, Kate, come on. Don't you?
I absolutely do. It's just that it's like Slay the Spire, which I've beaten it, but now I want to beat it some more.
That's honestly, that I was surprised to hear that that's what PJ said after finishing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, was that he wants to play it on New Game Plus, and I was like, you madman, what is wrong with you? But like, if that's the way a person feels, like, they're not wrong. That's just how they feel about it, and that's great.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Good for him.
Well, thank you again for coming on and throwing all these questions about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I hope the readers also, or the listeners, the readers of the
ear readers, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Thanks for the save there, Kate. Mm-hmm. Be sure to let us know in the comments below if you've picked up Xenoblade Chronicles 3, if you're planning to, if we made you feel that you don't want to play it, or you do now. Let us know your thoughts below. There's no right or wrong answer to that. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, why don't you make sure you've played the subscribe button, and if you haven't, don't worry, you don't have to play the other past subscribe buttons. You can play this one just fine. If you haven't, just go ahead and give it a click, and then ring the notification bell to be notified whenever we put out an expansion pass or additional DLC for that subscribe button, because it's important. You don't want to miss it. It's good DLC. Thank you again, Kate, for being here. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Xeon from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.
I think we should call this video Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
That's so good. Maybe I'll do it as a tag. Can I do it as a tag? Is that good?
Absolutely.